Today's episode of the Lucky Orange Show is a conversation with Victoria Taylor. Victoria is a digital marketing consultant and content marketing expert. Our conversation focused on content quality and what that even means in 2024. We talked about strategies for establishing authority and trustworthiness to appeal to Google's EEAT framework. We chatted about how to balance evergreen content with thought leadership content, as well as how the role of the blog is evolving. So if you're ready, let's go talk to Victoria Taylor. Journey and what's led you to the point you are now with content marketing.
Oh yeah, sure. So I am actually a self-taught content marketer for the past 9 years now. It'll be 10 in the next couple of months. So I definitely have a lot of skin in the game. Marketing is something that I really love. Content marketing specifically, especially when it connects with lead generation and SEO. And so I've been mainly working with SaaS and tech companies for those years. Those are my favorite companies to work with. I just really love that space because it's always changing. Things are always coming up. As you said, AI is the new thing, and as well as a new Google update, which is definitely affecting traffic and content for a lot of people. So I'm always on my toes. I love empowering and finding data-driven strategies for companies and problems. So yeah, that's my expertise.
You mentioned Google and AI, and there's been a lot of discussion recently around things like no-click searches, the AI summaries. Let's just go there. What does it look like in your world? What's your perspective on search and Google updates and how that's impacting how you might be approaching content?
Oh yeah, 100%. So over the past, especially last year to this year, a lot of companies have had to really craft and change the way that they do content and SEO because of Google's EEAT update. So experience, expertise, authority, and trust. Those are the big things that they're doing. And of course, Google being Google, it will tell us the things that it wants to tell us. And some of the other things we kind of have to figure out. And so a lot of especially tech companies had to restructure the way that they do content, the way that they even interact and build community, which is so important. And especially blogs are a big part of brand awareness, attracting leads, attracting prospects. And so having that impact means that you have to really shift and change. So Google really wants to see more humanness in content, especially as AI is prevalent. So reviews, testimonials, expert quotes, or even something that's reviewed by an expert, something to show that there is a human being involved and that can be trusted for the reader that's there. And on top of that, we also have to kind of battle with the way that the search pages, when it comes to even just showcasing content, there's more like the top first page of Google, there's more sponsored slots there than ever before. There's the accordion drop down for more information. There are now TikToks, right? TikToks coming up in search. Social search when it comes to content is also prevalent. And we also had a new Google Core update August 16, and it has definitely affected a lot of people. And along with that, Google also had a bug that they're trying to fix that is also affecting. So you'll see shifts in pages when it comes to your content and interaction. But for your, one-to-one channels like marketing or even social media, you're perfectly safe, which is always good. But it's really good to diversify. When it comes to AI, it's still a black box for a lot of people, right? Especially when it comes to Google starting to use AI search suggestions, AI search engines that are separate from Google, such as Search GPT, and kind of seeing how we're going to navigate that place and how that decides what is good content. Because the EEAT is really good, but it's almost like a guardrail for certain things. It's not really going to tell you the speed limit. It's just telling you where you need to be safe. So there's still a lot of discovery in place. There's still some things that we know actually work. The marketing funnel isn't broken. It's just being restructured right now, That's
an amazing way to put it. For anybody that's listening that's unfamiliar with EEAT, could you talk through what that means and how that has, how that impacts the approach with content creation?
100%. So years ago, it was all about you find the keyword, then you find the pain point, then you create the topic of the content and you write around it, right?
Right.
Now it's you find the pain point, then you find the topic, and then you find the keyword that's associated with it. So the order has kind of changed with the way things are. So Google wants to see more of, I'll go through the E's. E, which is expertise. Whoever is writing this, are they an expert in this area, right? So if you're a SaaS company and you're doing a review on products, the person who's writing the review, it can't just simply be like a generic writer. It has to be somebody who has a title or something that's associated with it for Google to be like, this is verified content. Um, and then experience, that's the UX, are they having problems navigating through your page? Are they experiencing anything really good? And so you really want to make sure that you're A/B testing your layouts for your blog, for your website, for every single piece of content that your customers are going to engage with. Because you may think it's great, but somebody else who doesn't have the technical background, isn't as close to the canvas as you are, is going to have a whole different thing. And then the A is authoritativeness. So do you have authority in this topic? So if you're a SaaS company that you're helping e-commerce and you're talking about e-commerce, that's your authoritativeness that you can build with Google. So Google will associate you within any search that they have with that topic. If you veer from that, you're kind of going outside of your scope, which is why, again, I'm kind of doing this fire hydrant style, why keyword clusters are really important with building authoritativeness to let Google know you are an expert to talk about this. Your brand is an expert to talk about this. And then the T is trust. Can people trust your information? That's again why reviews come in. Reviews, customer testimonials, having other people have really good things and really positive and honest things to say about your product or your content or their experience with you, that builds the trust. So it's no longer taking your word for it. And if I'm being honest, marketing has a very bad habit of if somebody writes a top blog article, people copy and paste the same format, the same information, whether it's wrong or right,
Right.
and it
Right.
becomes this thing. Now I think Google is really challenging people you have to become unique. You have to set your content apart with the EEAT in mind.
It's a great breakdown. I do have a few kind of questions in there, but I want to stitch it back to the AI conversation because the AI responses or summaries, specifically as Google would put it, are drawing content from elsewhere. So I imagine then that what that's drawing from is things that score positively in the EEAT framework. So they're not just putting a random answer. Yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect system, and it
Yeah.
may never be a perfect system. But I imagine starting with seeding the content with chasing these EEAT goals, if we call them
Yeah.
goals, would help you show up in those responses. Would that be kind of how people are thinking about this?
I mean, right now, again, AI search is like very, very new. And so we have
Mm-hmm.
to do it based on that, based on Google and how it does a search. One thing that I found that really helps is putting questions within your content frame. So what
Mm-hmm.
are the commonly asked questions that people have? Not just an FAQ section, but phrasing the questions and then having the exact answer right after so that the AI search engine kind of picks up, oh, here's the question that you're searching for. Here's the answer that comes up. And that's been really helpful for us, even for some of the companies I've worked with, for them to pop up in search for those AI tools. Again, the AI tool is focused on results driven. So is this going to answer this person's questions directly? So even having a summarized version of some of the answers people may have of your product, of the queries that you want to rank in, that can also help for you to be picked up. Even if it's a small snippet in the main body of the content that you've written, that's also something that I've seen pop up as we go along. And it, as much as, Google would like to say it's EEAT, keywords are also still just as powerful as ever. It's just how you navigate and being authentic and, uh, as well as making sure that the content that you've written is not fully AI written because we still don't know how Google or how other AI search engines are going to come to that because the humanness is such a big aspect right now when it comes to content.
Yeah. And all of these categories of expertise and authority, and it's all very human oriented. And then that's ultimately what the search engines are trying to do is prioritize the content that's going to answer your question, not just ranking something that performs well for the bots. When it comes to establishing who the expert is, so the expertise, if you're establishing a person with that, not just this blog post was published by Lucky Orange, for example, it's published by the author is me. When people think about that, I think people would tend to say, okay, well, does that mean we need to create thought leaders in our space? And the answer might be yes, but I'm curious if you could talk about how you would approach building expertise as it relates to maybe the individual author. Do they need to be talking on LinkedIn? Do they need to be doing stuff elsewhere that Google will recognize as trust signals? Or is it really just within the context of the blog that person shows up regularly for posts that are getting published?
I think in a perfect world, it's somebody who is showing up for the blog and also they have their thought leadership outside of the blog on socials. But realistically, for like a lot of tech companies and SaaS companies, you kind of got to work with what you have.
Yeah.
So this could either mean one, I think, I can't remember the exact name, but it's a medical blog that most people use. And what they do is they have the writer and then they have a section that says reviewed by this medical profession. So you're trusting your writers to do the research, but then something that's really quick and easy is having an expert review it. And even if you don't have an expert internally, you can create connection and collaboration with an expert outside that's willing to put their name to that. Of course, they have to actually review it, give some pointers, but that's one really good way of building authoritativeness. The next one is actually having the actual expert write it. Again, in a perfect world, some people are able to do that. Some brands, they don't have the capacity to do it. That's one way. Another way is that you can have it written by the writer, but within the context of the article, you have quotes from experts. So these are either quotes that you are legally allowed to use or quotes that you've directly asked the expert for. So sometimes you'll see on my LinkedIn post, I'll be like, does anyone know anything about doing design for XYZ? It's just really me trying to reach out and connect with people that I can have long-standing relationships to ask them for these quotes because they are experts in certain things. They see things in a different way that a writer, as exceptional as they are, will get, but they won't fully grasp, right? The next thing that I find is also really helpful is making sure, again, you're not doing the copy and pasting the same information that top ranking pages have. Yes, they're the top ranking pages for a reason, but there are other factors that can play into it outside of just the content itself. So you still have to create better content that's there. The skyscraper method by Brian, it's still relevant today. So building something better with the EAT in mind and just knowing that sometimes those top ranking pages, yes, they have the keywords, but they also probably have a very powerful backlinking team that's working overtime to make sure that that page stays ranked.
Wow. Yeah. When it comes to, you used the phrase keyword cluster earlier, and say that's kind of the complement. That might be the K in EEAT K keywords.
Yeah.
It's still relevant. It still matters. There's still gains to be had from going after a cluster of keywords, just a group of keywords oriented around kind of a content pillar. In the skyscraper method. So some of the stuff that's always worked is still getting you on the page and is still getting you in front of people. And, I'm curious when we've thought about the role of our blog and we think about the role of a blog in general, a lot of it there's been a lot of strategy around evergreen content and building against these keywords that will always be relevant for your brand and writing instructional copy and balancing that with like a help center and stuff like that. I'm curious how you see the role of the blog maybe evolving based on all of the changes that are happening. Is there something that you see, even if you're willing to predict multiple years out, how it might change from what we once saw, which is kind of a combination of things targeted to existing customers and education, and then a little bit of thought leadership? And where do you see that balance going in the coming years?
I think one thing that's super important is regardless if you build out your keyword clusters, evergreen content is super important. And evergreen content is just like a plant. If you don't water it and take care of it and refresh it, it will die, no matter how good it is. And there will always be someone who is also looking at your content and trying to find a way to outdo you, right?
Sure.
Trying to find a way to take your spot on that first page of Google. And so it's important to regularly do content refreshes, right? And also, one thing I also say is check the keyword volume and difficulty because they can change over time. For example, last year, a lot of the AI keywords, some of them were like very low, some of them were massively high. Now some of them are even keel, and some of the low ones are like getting bigger and bigger because
Hmm.
there are new keywords and new topics to explore in that area. The same can be said for past topics that have been around for a while. So just off the top of my head, it's just a hypothetical example. Let's say that you written content about content marketing examples. You were doing really good. You noticed that content was like really good evergreen content. It's dropped. Maybe now people are looking for content marketing example as opposed to examples, or content marketing examples, a longer form keyword that's actually outdoing that you need to navigate through. Now, I'm not saying you should switch the URL for your keyword often. I'm saying that sometimes when you've reached a certain threshold, 5, 6, 4 years, and you notice that there's a drastic decline, those are some things that you have to kind of look at to make sure, along with your user experience, if the content's still relevant. So upkeep in that as well. So building the keyword clusters, keeping your evergreen content refreshing right now that I've noticed with really, I was about to call some names, really good brands. I can say HubSpot, Zapier, Venngage, they've had these older blog posts that have been doing really good, but if you look on their website, they've massively refreshed them. So it
Hmm.
feels like they're publishing new content so frequently, but the truth is, half of that content is just old content that they're putting in work in to just push because it's proven that it's bringing in leads, it's proven that it's ranking. So as much as we like the shiny object syndrome, looking back at your past content and building on that, especially if it's going to help you towards your building authority in Google, is really important as well.
Yeah, I think that can be a powerful tool for small teams too. We talk about HubSpot, not a small team by any stretch of the imagination, even on the content side, but for a small team. And I imagine for when you would go in and start consulting with somebody, you might start by saying, look, we've got a lot of existing content. In many cases, of course, you might start with a brand and they're like, we want to start content. But assuming there's an existing blog, there's a lot of power in that existing work that's already been done.
Yeah.
Talk me through a little bit, maybe more specifically, about how that audit process, how the content updating and refreshing process can go. I have historically done sort of like a rot audit, redundant, outdated,
Mm.
trivial sort of audit, and then gone from there. In your experience, how do you approach that refresh? There's a lot that's been said about how to do this, but in your world, what does that look like?
Refresh can look different for everyone, but my idea of a perfect refresh is one, sitting down with the content. Then I just search for it on Google like a regular person. I go in a separate browser. I search for the keyword and the term for what I want that article to rank for, and I see what comes up. Because as much as I'm on the back end, I want to see what the experience is like on the front end. Then I would check, all right, is my article going to be buried by first a long list of sponsored posts? And if it's a very competitive keyword and it's a very competitive structure, that might be something you might want to consider if you have the budget for it. If you don't, then it's time to knuckle down and it's time to one, make sure that I use SEMrush or Ahrefs to see what are the keywords that are missing. What's the copy and the sections that are missing? Are they having a good user experience? Are the links working? Are the links relevant? Or does it look like keyword stuffing? Do I have an expert that can help me to give me an extra edge to what the content is saying? And then video content. Can this be turned into video and can I put it in the top fold so I can keep people there to increase my dwell time? Because increased dwell time, increased engagement lets Google know that this piece of content is helpful. The longer people stay on your page, the more Google is like, this is something people want. And so I'm figuring out it could also be a podcast or an audible, or it could be a checklist, something at the top full that's going to keep people there. One thing I've implemented is doing a quick read section. So especially if the article is long, I'll say, hey, if you're short on time, here's a small section, 7 bullet points, no more than 7 bullet points. Um, Here are all the 7 points you need to know about this article, and it'll take you to the links to the tools or the things that you need to know that are super important. So that, and the links within the quick reads are internal. So they're still staying within the blog and they're not sent anywhere external. And next, I would say, once you've kind of done the keyword research, done the content research, figured out ways to help to increase dwell time and put things in the top fold, the next thing is design. what are some sections instead of having heavy text that I can turn into graphics, turn into images because visuals are super important, and also breaking up big chunks of text. Um, People have shorter and shorter attention spans, and it's only going to get shorter as time goes on. And so, what are ways that I can make this easy to read, schemable, step by step guide? One brand that I really like is Storyline. They're a small team, they're a small company, and their product is about kind of showing people how to create demos for their sales team.
Right.
And their keyword strategy is they go for low KD, low volume, very specific, and they only show how their tool can help the customer. So from the top fold, they have their own tool showing how to create a demo to solve the problem. So they said like how to create an email signature, like something simple, and they'll go for that long tail and short tail keyword. They'll show in the top fold exactly the tutorial, and you can use the tool. It's interactive. You can go through, and then the bottom you have the written section. The UX of the page is good, and so refreshing content and kind of structuring content in that way is really good, right?
So everything that you're talking about from a refresh standpoint is really oriented around the human that's reading the blog post, that's experiencing the blog, and that I think that's just worth doubling down on and hammering and saying, yeah, of course we want to win in the algorithm, but we're still building something for the person who's arriving on the blog to have a great experience.
100%. And as obvious as it may seem, a lot of marketers, a lot of people who are creating content, especially when you're churning out so much content, it can be easy for that kind of mindset to take a backseat because you have so many KPIs and so many objectives that's there. As so many brands that you're competing with that you're trying to keep on top of, but the core human experience is really what's going to keep it together.
Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit from the blog into kind of a more general content marketing space. There's a lot of different levers that we can pull as content marketers to get attention on the brand, get people through different stages of the funnel. Whatever you believe about the funnel, there is some sort of funnel that exists with your company, from awareness all the way through becoming a customer. I'm curious in your space and what you're seeing, what's been working lately. Is it ebooks, webinars, ecosystem? What are you playing with, and what are you seeing success with in content?
Yeah, I think even to just start to address that question is a lot of people think that the customer journey is linear. It's not. It's as chaotic as it looks. It's has many branches to how people can get to your brand. And the funnel is easy because it's wide enough for people to drop down, but a customer journey is never like straight through. So branding is super important. I think because we expect top brands like HubSpot or Pepsi or Canva to just, they have the money and they have the team to do these things, but they've invested heavily in branding. And especially if you're a small team, webinars, being active on social media platforms like LinkedIn or even TikTok or even YouTube, that even if you can't see tangible ROI, your brand is being sent out there because the possibility of your potential ICP is there. And it's ignored a lot because people would prefer to use blogs. Yeah. Blogs or keywords or ads because you can see the tangible ROI. But people can only buy from you if they know about you. If you work for a company and you get up and you go and you have go to a restaurant with some friends, you hang out with friends, and you mention your company name to them and they're like, what? What's that? What did they do? Your brand, you haven't done a good enough branding. Branding is you can say the name of the product with anyone who's within or outside of your industry and they just know it. They have an idea of what it is or they've seen the colors. And so working on your branding and having someone that's building demand generation and demand generation content, somebody who's working hard on social, somebody who's doing podcasts or webinars, those are things that are going to, and partnerships, especially partnerships, those are things that are going to do it. Branding is very important. It also affects your search, like your authoritativeness. If people don't know about your brand, but you have a good piece of content, that's just one of the many things you have to check off the list. So social media platforms, webinars, video content, podcasts, partnerships, events, whether they're virtual or in person, they still hold weight because if there's no one who knows your brand, they're not going to search for you directly. And as much, a lot of brands made the mistake of relying solely on search for you to come up on the first page. But again, If another brand is more known, people are going to trust that brand over yours 100% of the time.
Yeah. I feel like this entire year, I've just been hearing people saying, we're getting crunched on our budget. We're getting crunched on, our cost per click is going up. Our paid channels are struggling, or we're having to experiment a lot there. We're having to accept thinner margins, and the directional decision making then pushes them to say we need to invest in brand. And I think that a lot of people and a lot of brands are deciding what that even means. And I think what you just said there is really what it means, is that kind of all these efforts across the board will lift the visibility. You need to be strategic with it, and you need to be willing maybe to spend money on promotion in some areas where organic reach struggles. But deploying all these different assets and channels and stuff in a strategic kind of congruent way is the best way to get the brand out there.
100%.
And so I kind of want to shift into where you go to follow along for all of this. We've covered quite a bit in the past 20 plus minutes, and you know what you're talking about, but where do you go to read and learn about content marketing? Who are you following along with? And what would be some recommendations for people who are, trying to advance their own content marketing careers?
Okay, sure. That's a good question. Number one, no matter what social media platform I'm on or the one that I frequent the most, I make sure that I kind of teach my algorithm to give me a specific type of people. So for TikTok, I only follow certain marketers. I can't know the name off the top of my head, but those who I really trust, like I know that their information is like very solid. I know if I want to get some updates, they're the ones that I would go to. And I kind of just train my algorithm to do that. Also, what I do is I have a professional social media account and I have a personal social media account. So I don't mix the two together.
Right.
So for my professional social media account, you're going to see SEO updates, content marketing tips and tricks, strategies. But for my personal social media, you're going to see puppies and gym workout videos. So I keep the algorithm separate so that it always feeds me what I need. LinkedIn, which I've definitely gotten more active on, it's engaging with people's content. So I will see someone post really great content that I really like. I'll save the post, but I'll go into the post and I'll ask questions about things that I'm curious with, because there are other people there who are in the same space or have a little bit more knowledge that we can engage and have those conversations with. And like people on LinkedIn who comment are always willing to have discussions in that space. Being a little bit more, having email blast. So if you're somebody who's always in your inbox, again, I have a professional email where I sign up for certain brands and certain media outlets that whenever an update comes out, I can just check my inbox and be like, oh, okay. Which is one of the ways that I know, like, oh, Google updated because Search Engine Land decided to write a post. They shared the newsletter blast. That's how you kind of keep top of mind. And what I would say if you're a new content marketer or marketing person in the field is to test the information. It's one thing to know information, it's another thing to put it into practice. So finding ways that you can put those tips and those tricks into practice so you're not talking about it from a pseudo perspective, but you've kind of made your mistakes or made your wins, and you now know how to kind of shape where it is. Because there are times where there's some marketing tips where it's kind of people are just regurgitating information, and then there's some marketing tips where you know this person knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so being able to test it out for yourself sometimes allows you to see
Yeah.
allows you to test
I completely agree. And that's I think that you have to take action on stuff. You can think about how you want to work all day, but at the end of the day, especially in content, your work is judged very visibly. It's what you put out there. It's what you publish. It's really not the strategy. The people that will care about the strategy will be other marketers, and they will be maybe the team behind it that wants to replicate it. But they really care about what's out there. And so I think you're dead on that. You got to put things into practice. As you look forward, we've talked about AI. We've talked about a variety of different ideas that are kind of in the now. As you look forward through the rest of 2024 and heading into next year, what has you most excited about content? What has you most excited in the digital space in general?
I see a lot of CEOs and CMOs being far more active on social than they used to be in the past, because they're realizing that they cannot just sit back in the shadows. They know that they're a part of the branding and a part of the trust. So I'm seeing more people in leadership positions in companies being more active on social, being more active in branding. I also see more AI use, and I also see where that's a good thing and that's a bad thing. Because one, it brings the opportunity for people who are amazing copywriters and amazing writers to really shine. But two, there's still some tools and methods that AI is kind of presenting that's going to be problematic for a couple of people in content. So, for example, the AI copy detectors. I don't trust them. Why? And I wrote a post about this. I've written a copy, 2,000 words, all my words straight from my head, and then I created an AI generated 2,000 words. I put both copies in 3 different AI copy detectors, and both of them were dinged as AI generated. And so I would say like they're not at that stage yet where they can really catch the difference between human and AI generated. And Google is also building up to, we're not sure yet, also building up to finding a way to penalize people who use purely AI generated content. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know how they're going to test it. And if the AI copy detectors can't figure it out, Google has the resources to figure it out. So I would say if you're relying heavily on AI generators to write copy for you and write content for you, yes, it saves time. Yes, it's good, but we're not sure what the penalties will be. And it also has a good way of making you lazy and giving you copy that it's already given another person.
Right. Yeah, it's just some kind of a bad habit to get into. And I would also say it harkens back to the earlier parts of our conversation where like, is that actually going to establish you as a winner in the EEAT space? Is that going to be, is it quality? Is the quality there? Most of the time, in my experience with the basic AI writing tools, it's a great thinking partner. It's a great first draft partner, but I end up spending a good amount of time writing on that post anyway. So it can be helpful to guide you through, but ultimately it's not there yet, nor do I necessarily want it to be a complete replacement for a true writer. We may get to that place on the leadership being more present on social part of things. I'm curious what a conversation would look like in your space with the brand saying, we want the brand to be posting from, let's say, LinkedIn. We want our brand channel to be posting. We also want our CMO to be posting. We also want to encourage other employees to be posting. What would the role of the brand's channel be? Is it really just to post that really super evergreen stuff and then reshare stuff from CMO and other people? Or how do you approach that balance of like, we want to establish thought leadership, but we also know that we have this brand channel here. What do we do with the brand channel?
I think one of the ways to think about it is that your brand channel is kind of like the vehicle, and your employee, your CMO, they're the ones in the car, right? Or they're part of the pit team that's going to help to keep that car going. So especially when you're B2B, it doesn't matter. If you have a brand channel on social, it has to have a personality. That's the only way it's going to really thrive. Otherwise, you're going to be boring. And I'm not saying you're supposed to have a meme in every post, right? Everyone is different. Slack has a really good social media personality, and it does work with B2B people because a lot of businesses use it. They engage with different people. They engage with their employees' posts. They create the content, and so employees can either it doesn't have to be one, it can be 2 things that coexist in the same space. They can reshare the same material that the brand is, or they can engage with the brand in a very constructive manner, not just be like, great job, just talk about the experience. And 2, they can talk about who they are as an expert and how that product plays a role, or how being a part of that product or that team plays a role in who they are as a professional. Right. One of the reasons why a lot of people like Google in terms of like company cultures, because they post a lot about their employees, and their employees post a lot about their journey in Google, as opposed to actively promoting Google. And that helps people to think, this is a place that I want to work. This is a place that I want to go to. Likewise, Slack is really good. If somebody who is not even a part of the Slack workforce is like, Slack, you know what you should do? I saw this post where you should put read receipts on messages, and his comments were filled with things that said the opposite. And Slack just joined in like, you know what? Based on what's going on in the comments, I think we're gonna have to think about it.
Yeah, we'll
and
pass.
So that is a really good dynamic. Yeah, I would pass on that.
That's yeah. I think people are navigating that as they build out founder brands and expert brands, employee You do want to create a culture of content where people know that everything they're working on does have a story and is something that could be valuable for the audience. But balancing that with what the brand is doing too. I know that specifically on LinkedIn, maybe a year and a half ago, they have thought leader ads now to where you can actually run an ad promoting one of your people's posts via the brand's ads portal. So they definitely recognize that that's coming, and we could probably do a complete other episode wholly on founder brand and all of that stuff. But I really appreciate you carving out time to chat. Let's wrap though with where can people find you online? I know you said LinkedIn. Where can people connect with you, follow along with everything you're saying, and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So my main two channels are LinkedIn and YouTube. So LinkedIn, you'll find me at Victoria Lana Taylor. You can connect or follow me there. YouTube, it's Victoria Knows Marketing. And also, if you'd like to connect with me or just know more about me on my website, Victoria Taylor Marketing is where it's at. I think you'll provide some of the links in the show notes. And if you're on LinkedIn, say hi or just ask me a question about content. Always happy to chat about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with our audience. And I really appreciate it. I've gotten some notes here that I'm going to take back and reevaluate what we're doing. So I really appreciate it. It's always nice to talk to somebody who definitely understands the topic as in depth as you do. So again, thank you, Victoria, so much.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Lucky Orange Show. Before we go, if you haven't tried Lucky Orange yet, head over to www.luckyorange.com for a free 7-day trial of our leading conversion rate optimization toolkit. What's in that toolkit? Well, let's start with session recordings and heat maps. With session recordings, you can watch a full playback of an entire visitor journey on your website. Everywhere they click, scroll, move, everything they do in your site, a full playback. So you can see what's getting in the way of conversions and what is getting people over that finish line to convert. With dynamic heat maps, you can see the average visitor behavior on a page. So you can see clicks, moves, and scrolls. You can see how far down the page the average visitor is scrolling. And if something is below that line, that means that more than 50% of visitors are not seeing that. Lucky Orange also offers tools like live chat, announcements, and surveys so that you can communicate with your website visitors in real time. So again, if you have not tried Lucky Orange, or if you're not a user yet, head over to luckyorange.com. Check it out, 7-day free trial with no credit card required. If you're a Shopify store owner, head over to the Shopify App Store to download the Lucky Orange app to your store today, as well as BigCommerce, HubSpot, Square, and many more. Check us out, and happy optimizing.